went through, what they think on it, and they also have had some time to reflect on the process, what the more long-term insights that they have gathered from that. So with that, I'll just invite the volunteers who we identified in the call. So Mimosa from Albania, Natalia from Argentina, Kofi from Ghana, Mendes we will get from a Digital Connection, Batuzil from Mongolia, Salma from Morocco, Emmanuel again from Ghana, Belen from Argentina, Elias from Kenya, Monica as well from Kenya. Of course, the inputs will not be limited to the...
Thank you. So Albania was the country part in the first lab. In our region, Albania had an interest to participate in the lab, given the fact that the country has very low insurance density and insurance penetration rate, and we thought this is opportunity for us to learn for international experience and from multi-party cooperation in order to find innovative solutions, to include more low-income people in the insurance schemes. And so we had the chance to have this wonderful experience and to learn from our international colleagues from Ghana, from Kenya, from Mongolia, to sit together, and also not only to sit together with our international friends, but also in the country. It was very valuable for us, sitting together, different stakeholders from the private sector, from the banking sector, government institutions, the civil society, and also the regulator. So it was the first time all these stakeholders sitting together to find solutions and to analyze and brainstorming on barriers to enter the market, and so to make a big step in increasing inclusive insurance in the country. Thank you.
Thank you for that. So, so the same question to Natalia.
Okay, thank you. Hello everyone again. We're very happy to be here in person. Now the second lab for us was at the beginning of the pandemic, so all the process was online. It was a very, very exciting experience and very new for regulators and for the team, of course. Oh, well, regarding your question, I would like to start giving a little background about the SSN and how this project came about. For the past five years, the SSN has been actively working to promote access to financial services for women through insurance. So offering women-specific products for us is a way to empower and control the risk on the family finance. So for us it was very important. And international level, with the support of the IIS and A2II, we organized together the Roundtable Women, Specific Needs and Inclusion, and was the first step and a starting point for the regulator, for the stakeholders to think about the gender topics and important for the global and necessities, especially in our work, in our country. So when A2II launched the call for the application for this lab, with no doubt and hesitation, we said yes. And we imagined and we create this project. And fortunately, that our project is called Women and Insurance. Fortunately, we won. So being the first country in Latin America to participate. The Argentina team also is integrated by insurance company that are working in gender topic, and we are the support of Ministry of Economy too. So for us, it's very important because it's the first time that the SSN is leading this project in a collaborative manner with the private sector. So, well, it's a great opportunity and a chance for us to be something different, innovative, disruptive, and new. So thank you.
Thank you, Natalia. So very interesting, here we have Argentina who had an idea and they thought that the Innovation Lab was a platform to take it forward, while Morocco, getting started, Albania getting started on the inclusive insurance process and then putting it together and then, putting together a multi-stakeholder team. In fact, on that question, because generally supervisors, given what they do, they do it by themselves in association with the policymakers within the jurisdiction. But the lab process asks of the supervisors to put together a multi-stakeholder team to work as a team and go through the different phases of the lab leading up to the innovation in that particular context. So just to get experiences and insights on how was your process of putting together a multi-stakeholder team, and let me invite Kofi first from Ghana.
Okay, thank you. It was an exciting moment when we were invited to the lab and were asked to select a multi-stakeholder team. It got me thinking about the challenges that we have and the fact that we as regulators cannot just sit in our office and find solutions to all the challenges. It made me start thinking who and whose help do we need to solve this. And there's a saying in our dialect that wisdom is not found in one man's head. So at that stage, I began to realize that there were people whose help I need, who may have the answers that I need to the challenges. And also about the fact that, so between the regulator and the regulated, it looks like we and them. Okay, so when we go to the meeting, they sit on the other side, we sit on this side, but now we sit on the same side, and we are finding solutions to common problems between all of us, and that was a game changer. And again, ever since, when I get things from the industry, I think from the industry point of view, what is their challenge with this? It's not just about my viewpoint as a regulator, but from their viewpoint as well, so that together we can find solutions that way. So having to put a stakeholder panel together was a really a mind-changing process. And by the time, I remember when I called some of them, they said, well, why do you want me to join you? It's always been we, you, and us. So, so yes, those were some of the issues that I had to think through selecting the stakeholders.
Thank you, Kofi. Indeed, against like me and you, or like we against them became us. Actually, I put the same question to Mendes, who's joining us virtually from Rwanda. Unfortunately, she couldn't be here in person due to visa challenges. And I would put that question to you, Mendes, if you could hear me, about how did you react to being asked by the supervisor to be a part of the second lab process in Rwanda?
Well, for us, firstly, I, as a broker, I was wondering where my space is, particularly in the inclusive sector. So I had my reservations in that. I think most brokers, we mostly focus on the corporate. Now going into inclusive insurance was what do I have to offer to this table? And to make matters a bit more difficult, we were in complete lockdown, which meant everything had to be digital. There were no actual face-to-face interactions. So that offered a new challenge on members. Would we be able to use whatever tools were being brought in? There was the introduction of Mural, which was a first for majority of us. And how do we actually interact with the other members when everything is digital? So one, we had to be open to using new technologies. We had people that we had never met, particularly those from the consumer rights protection organizations, and you're going to meet them using your computer. So it was something that we were thinking, was this going to be possible? How are we going to do the group discussions? How am I going to trust this person by merely talking to them through these technologies? So it was a bit of a challenge. We had so many people bringing their different assumptions. And of course, you always have technology challenges, especially when we started. There was a lot of rain and power would go off and you would lose your connection, or someone is talking and they are muted. So we learned a lot, and it opened us up to be able to know that we cannot remain relevant without technology. So we were happy to be part of this, and I think different people coming from different areas. We had the MNOs. At least they were able to push us to accept the use of technology more. We had the people from Access to Finance Rwanda who have been working tirelessly to stimulate the financial sector development. So they have really been pushing us on new ways to deal with clients and how to make insurance more accessible. So it was an interesting journey, different people from different sectors, getting the views from the consumer protection where we are getting it wrong, and getting from ACA Africa, the distribution channels, what do we do better? So it was quite an enlightening experience, and working with the regulator to see how we can all contribute to the market. Thank you.
Thank you, Mendes. Thank you for sharing.
And I forgot to say hello to everybody.
Hello, Mendes, and thank you for sharing that perspective and bringing about, from the non-supervisory stakeholders that come together, and starting from scratch, trying to build that trust, and then working up to the implementations. And from somebody who thought that what role a broker had in inclusive insurance to becoming a pillar of the lab process in Rwanda, it was great working with you, Mendes, through the lab process as well. So moving on to the next question and next perspective, as you saw during Teresa's presentation, one of the key directive guidelines of the lab process is being customer-centric. And within that, the process has inbuilt phases where the supervisors and the multi-stakeholder teams do speak to the end customers to get their perspective. Now, I would just like to know, from Lab 1 and Lab 2 alumni, what the opportunity to be able to interact with the end customer, the main target audience, so to say, how did that change your perspective? And I could take this question to Batuzil from Mongolia first.
Okay, thank you. Okay, first of all, I'd like to mention that I attended and participated many kinds of international dialogues and conferences, something like that. But I really want to mention that this lab really affects a good result. I think that because of its approach, the different approach, the lab, the dialogue, the facilitators, it was really great experience to us. It was very new. No type of conference, like boring conferences, let's say. It was totally different, and it brings us together, stakeholders at the same line, at the same page, like friends, no more authorities and no more enemies. During the lab, we had several chances to meet the end customers. Especially, I really want to mention the learning journey in Ghana was really perfect chance to get the real life. It was totally great experience. And during our own country, we organized several times end customer things, including a focus group discussion among the SMEs and small businesses. And we organized the National Stakeholders Conference, and also industry professionals conference, and the result was great. It made a great change in our perspectives, because many years, maybe in 90s or early 2000s, we usually thought the problem is the awareness, the lack of awareness and the lack of knowledge and lack of the lack of financial education of the market, of the consumers. They don't know, they don't understand. We blame the customers. We used to blame them. But during the lab, we changed it to we should blame ourselves, including the industry, including the professionals, including the regulatory. Sorry. Yes. Also, besides those conferences and focus group discussions, we did a research among those segments. So we found out that actually the result was very amazing. The entire consumer market has grown intelligence and grown knowledge, awareness of insurance. But the problem was the accessibility. The access was not that easy. So the main issue was the ease of access to our product, to our service. So we were not that clear. We were not that easy to use, easy to provide the service. So that was the main, very interesting result of the lab.
Thank you so much for sharing that perspective. And I'll take the same question to Salma from Morocco. Like, how did interactions with the end customer, the last mile, so to say, change your perspective during the course of the lab?
Interacting with the end customer was very valuable for us, really. Because we usually work in our offices, very far from reality, and we have like an idea of the field that is completely false. So I remember when we met informal workers, and personally I interviewed my personal coach, who was before a waiter in a restaurant, and he lost his job with the coronavirus, and he lost his social security. And he was really ready to pay for an insurance, to keep having his social security, but he couldn't find any offer, any private insurance that could offer him something that was accessible for him. And I remember also interviewing one other person of our team, interviewing another informal worker and asking him, what do you think the price is of a house insurance? He said, the price of a car insurance is like $300 per year. So I can't imagine how much is a house insurance. So he really thought that because of a house is much more expensive than a car, so that the insurance of the house would be much more expensive than the car. And this is not true. That you all know that house insurance is maybe cheaper than a car insurance. So really meeting people in the field made us realize that our idea of the reality of the market was completely false, and we were wrong. We are doing things wrong, and we're not enough consumer-centric in the regulator and also in the insurance companies. And I agree with Ozil when he says that we don't have to blame the customer. We have to blame ourselves. Because in the coronavirus crisis, we were able to make it easy for everyone to understand, to be aware of the virus, to be aware of the globally. So why can't we be able to make people aware of the importance of insurance and make it accessible also for them? I think it's something. I think really we have to blame the market and the regulators more than the people themselves, because it's up to us to make it clear for everyone and to make the right offer for them, really.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much for these insights, how we have been looking at the collaborations coming about, how the perspectives change when we actually speak to the end customer who ultimately we are striving to serve. At this moment, I'll just like volunteers from Lab and 1-2 who are of course not here, representatives, if you would like to share something from your perspective on one of the things that we have been discussing thus far, on either the opportunity to interact with the end customer or the opportunity, how the multi-stakeholder teams coming together with the supervisors being the anchors for it. All right, if not, as and when during the course of discussion you feel like an input, please do just interrupt me and share your perspective. So I'll quickly, yeah.
Okay. Just a question. Sorry, my name is Andrew from Zambia. Sometimes it felt like, I don't know if people are familiar with that movie, The Avengers, where you've got different superheroes coming together to fight and save the world, right? So I look at the multi-stakeholder dimension to be something like that. But I just wanted to get a feel of the previous labs. How difficult was that? Coming from different places, different ideas, different perspectives, and how did you try to resolve or come in line to achieve your goals? Thank you.
A good question. It was very difficult, especially for us that the second lab was virtually. So to maintain the motivation of the team, maintain the commitment of the first ideas of the prototypes. So I believe that it's a collaborative work, and if the industry is interested in the project, I believe that it can be true, real, But I suggest to continue in a little small group, having different meetings, involve other stakeholders to support the ideas, the first ideas, listen the team, because the Argentina team suffered different changes during the 1 year, 2 years that and we continue working together, and I believe now we are friends. That she's from the industry and now she's a friend. So I suggest that listen the industry as a regulator, listen the industry and try to understand the necessities, because I learned from this lab that we are in our office with many things to resolve in different areas, from the supervision and control, and we also need to understand that the necessities change every day. The necessity changes. So we need to improve more regulations, we need to improve our way to work inside the organization and to the market. So this is my idea of what you can do.
Thank you, Nita. Anybody else? Yes, please.
Yeah, just want to tackle the question, not from the Avengers point of view. But one of the things that I realized that, listen, the challenge is not too different, whether in country or on an international level. It's the same challenge we're trying to fix. I realize that in country is the same challenge trying to fix it in many different ways. The unfortunate thing is that we're not working as a team to try and fix this, whether from the regulatory point of view, trying to create the environment to get us to resolve the issue, and then from competitor point of view, scrambling, for market share and all of that, And if move this to the international level, it's the same thing. Many people are trying to tackle the same problem from different angles. But so what the lab taught us is the fact that first of all, it's the same challenge. And then got us to share experiences to realize that, listen, we're trying to fix the same thing from different angles. So you get to learn from many people, and then you add to yours and try and tackle the problem. And for me, the most important thing is the fact that this is a big job. There's no way you can do it alone. There's a need for you to collaborate, find partnerships sometimes outside your scope to get this into work. And I think that's the big thing from the lab for me.
Thank you for that. In fact, just an extension of it, especially with Lab 2 being a totally virtual exercise, Also from a A2II's perspective, it was a challenge. And, we have Mariela joining us, who was the project manager for the lab for Lab 2. And I would just like to get her perspective on essentially a side spin to that question, like in a virtual, like totally virtual lab, how difficult was it from your perspective as the manager for the lab on getting all the stakeholders together, trying to create that trust? Mariela.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
It's a pleasure to see you all. And as you can see, I'm not in cold Germany, but in Tunisia, where it's quite hot right now. But it's lovely to see you all. So I think in terms of project management, when we started off the experience, we thought that we would just apply the program from Lab 1, just apply it to Lab 2, would be fine, and it would be a wonderful program. And we realized with the COVID pandemic hitting that there was a lot of learning involved. We had to find out how Mural works ourselves, because I had never used it prior to the lab either. So there was a lot of learning. Sometimes we had to be patient. As Mandy said, sometimes we just had to postpone for a day or two to wait for the internet connection to be there. And I'm not only talking about, the lab teams, but our own connection was sometimes also failing us over in Germany. So, and then it also involved a lot of multitasking. We had the WhatsApp group open at the same time as the Zoom or the WebEx, and then we were trying to juggle the Mural tab as well. So this was a lot of new type of work that we weren't used to before. And finally, I think we also had to stay open to understand, the challenges involved in the new work, and we adapted it quite a number of times. And I think the teams also learn how to adapt to our new requests every week, because we thought, okay, we have a better solution now, we'll try this out. And this was really something that was very exciting for us, sometimes tiring as well, I think both for the teams and for us. But at the end, we were really, really happy to see how the connections could be made online. And I really had the impression, I've never met all of you before, but I do feel like we know each other really well. And we would, recognize each other if we were to cross in the streets or something. So my wish is really to be able, to meet you someday. And I really wish you a wonderful conference, and I hope that you enjoy the few days in Frankfurt.
Thank you so much, Mariela, for sharing that, and hope you're enjoying Tunis. So taking the discussion forward and, getting more perspective from our lab alumni here. Again, the lab, one of the cornerstones of the lab is having a customer-centric approach, an innovation process being built around it, leading up to the kind of solutions that you did come up with during Lab 1 and Lab 2. So just, some very high-level insights into the kind of innovation solutions that you came up with, and, just if you'd like to share your examples with us. And let me first invite Emmanuel from Ghana to share.
Okay, so if you just allow me to just veer off your question a bit, and basically to share how powerful this whole process is. And for me, I think that's more the bigger thing I took away. So we came to the table, a competitor, like I said earlier before, with Big Brother somewhere else, whipping up to light and all of that, but at the end of the day, what we didn't realize was the power being created among us, to go out there, to go and tackle whatever is there for us to do. And I remember doing some road work with Kofi, big man, visiting clients and realize how important, insurance is to these people in the rural folks. Particularly, it was my hometown, really. And this is something that we did not know before. For most of them, they are taking insurance for the first time, and it's really, really helped them in that. So you realize how power was able to be generated amongst us, to the extent that when we got back, there was some decision by the government to ban the use of airtime as a way of paying insurance premium. And you have no idea how many people, the number of people in the safety net that we created, close to about 3 million Ghanaians who are taking insurance for the first time, obviously at the verge of losing, that protection. And I was amazed that at that point in time, there was nothing like being a competitor, being a regulator, walking but running around the table, to try and then, again, use a concept that came through powerfully from the lab, which has to do with partnerships, trying to realize that this is something that we can't deal with alone, and therefore we needed to go outside our sphere, to try and find people, together work with them and survey the 3 million people who, if the government had gone through with the decision, they would have lost the insurance protection. And I remember going through that process and having pictures of the faces, the field work that we did, how that basic insurance covers, meant so much to these guys, and that for me was the power, behind making sure that the government did not come through with that decision. And for me, I know the client experience is there, but beyond that is how much this meant to the people and how we're able to survey that. And for me, it was big.
Thank you for sharing that. And great to know that the approach and the platform built through the lab was able to address a real-time challenge that came up and which could have seriously disrupted inclusive insurance in Ghana. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. No, Kofi, please do that. Yes.
I just wanted to talk about the outcome. So there were two things that the Ghanaian team finally agreed to do. The first one was micro and small business clinics, and this was finding a more effective way of doing consumer education. Something that we actually carried out, and we were very fortunate just at the end of our lab to get some funding to pilot it, and have had some other opportunities to again carry it out. So basically it's about carrying out business clinics for micro and small businesses, and it's not, it's boring talking about just insurance on its own. Insurance comes with the way people live their life. So when you get these small and micro businesses and you do a business clinic for them, how to manage their business, how to keep their books, and included in the things you are talking about is how to identify and manage their risks. And one of the things they need to manage their risks is insurance. So as the demand side, consumer education, but it's done in a completely different manner. And we've done it a couple of times. And there have been some other projects that have used the approach to also do it. There's currently an insurance for MSEs that is being implemented, and on the demand side, this is the approach that is being used to do it. The other thing we wanted to do was to try to identify the customer journey, identify the pain points along the journey, and see how we could look at removing or improving those pain points so that the customers will have a better experience. We did a number of things. We realized that complaints and claims are very huge pain points for consumers, and so we decided that we would need to set up some system that will help us to monitor how we deal with complaints and claims for customers. It's been a very long time, but eventually we got that pushed into our National Financial Inclusion Strategy. And as I speak, there is a project funded through our government by the World Bank, and that system is going to be built, and it will enable anybody who makes an insurance complaint to know what has happened to his complaint. The regulator will know, the consumers will know, everybody will know, and you can go there and see when you made that complaint and whether anybody has done anything about it. And so we are looking forward to it, and we hope that it will happen and help us to remove the pain points for the customers.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. I'll actually take the same question and ask Belen from Argentina to share what they got out of the lab in terms of ideas.
In relation to our campaign, awareness campaign, we believe that it's necessary to explain the difference between awareness and lack of awareness, which is the foundation of our project. We prefer not to say lack of. We try to say to raise, to generate awareness, because if we think in terms of lack of, we are placing all the responsibility on the community. So it's the people are the ones who don't have awareness. So it's the problem of the people. And then we can wash our hands. So the Argentinian team developed the opposite way, the opposite concept, with responsibility. We had to build this awareness together, like a friend, like friends. And secondly, I think that our sector in Argentina is a little individualistic and non-collaborative sector. And this is a dichotomy, because our genesis is solidarity, is collaborative, it's a mutuality. So I think that the first and most important change in our project was the awareness that we generated in our companies, in our minds, in our human capital. Because, like we say in Argentina, nadie ama lo que no conoce. We can't love if we don't know. So the change starts inside, not outside. And then it was a great learning process, because we didn't have the opportunity of working together, the regulator and a few companies, not all the companies in Argentina, a few companies, united by a common purpose, to improve the people's lives. It's wonderful. And at the end, also there is another main topic that I want to share with us, that defined our sector in Argentina, our activity, not industry, because in Argentina we say industry when we talk about insurance, but we are an activity, yes, not industry. Which is the fact that our companies usually develop products from the comfort of our desk, yes? Like you say, like he said, and sometimes without knowing which the true people needs are. And from this point to start developing products. So we need to put the focus on persons, like he said, not even clients, on persons with problems like us. So an example, a concrete example, in our company, we created an health insurance, to transgender people, yes, that covers sex change, surgeries, and hormonal treatments. And it was great. It was a great learning process for the soul, not for the business, for the soul. So, thank you.
Thank you, Belen. Thank you. I'll take the question forward to Salma from Morocco to share their example.
An example of an outcome that,
Essentially what the project came about, the outputs came about, and how do you think that
the learning process.
what was innovative around it? Yes.
So I will share my experience about the outcome of the innovative process of the A2II lab and what it brought to me personally and to the team, I think. So the process was really great. Why? Because it brought different stakeholders together in an informal atmosphere, I would say. Because we used to, meet in formal atmospheres, with formal, meetings. The meetings where you go and you're very serious, and at the end, there's no outcome actually, and it's just blah blah blah.
Yes.
But the innovation lab gave us this opportunity to gather together and to be us really.
Yes.
To meet and each person had the opportunity to be himself, to talk, to be free to talk, to say what he thinks really about insurance. Sometimes the companies. Some representatives of companies started, insulting themselves, insulting their own companies. So it was really, really nice, to be free to talk and to remove this filter, we always have in our professional day-to-day life. And I think this made us able to innovate, really start innovating actually, and it's something actually personally I took with me at the end of the lab. So in my day-to-day professional life, it's a process, and thanks to Yanis, thanks to our coach, and I try to transpose this way of thinking, of talking to people, because it's a nice way to build things. It's a really nice way to build things. Sometimes you have to have this courage to be yourself, so that you can create something. If you always have this filter, you will never have an impact. I have to say. So remove this filter, and then you give a chance to have an impact. And it's something that I took with me in my day-to-day life, even in the regulatory because I'm working in the regulatory supervisor. And something that I took with me, and I'm trying also to encourage people working with me to be this way and stop protocols, try to be concrete, try to be yourself, try to have an impact on what you are. And I would like to thank especially Yanis, because someone that had this impact, the way of doing things, his way of doing things, his way of gathering us, etc., and making us being just ourselves was really impacting for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, please.
So I would like to add something.
Speak up a little bit so that
Yes.
we can have it.
So the lab developed new ideas, generated new ideas, and I would say a new way of thinking. So now, as a regulator, I mentioned that we were the first regulator in the region who participated in this lab. So after that, we have presented and shared our experience also with other countries in the region in different conferences. In 2019 in Macedonia, and then in September 2021 in Ljubljana in Slovenia. So it has become a topic. So we are discussing, we are aiming at collaborating, also at regional level, so to find solutions. And now we see some products, some tangible products from this lab. Also from the market side, so there are more innovative distribution channels developed and used from the market, and new products developed, mainly also during COVID. There were conventional insurance, but also inclusive insurance products, so with limited so benefits for the insurers, and but cheaper. So it gives also an opportunity to the low-income people to be part of these insurance schemes. So let's hope that after we received, at least I'm talking about my country, the first sparkle was the Insurance Innovation Lab, and now we will continue to achieve our goals to financial inclusion, to more include people in the financial.
Thank you. It's very heartening to see like the variation of it, like from initiating inclusive insurance in a new market altogether to going up and creating such peer exchanges that leads to solutions being addressed outside the lab, questions that we're asking, creating a platform of sorts, to creating such camaraderie and looking at unconventional areas to be addressed, which was not typically there. It's really, really heartwarming for us. And in fact, in that spirit, talking about this peer exchange, and we have already heard some great examples, but I would just go to Ilyas from Kenya to just understand like this peer exchange that we have as a part of the lab process, where we hear from other countries, teams, and learn from each other, from our counterparts. How did that process be for you, and what were some of the insights that you had from that?
Yeah, as has been mentioned before, we are basically addressing the same challenges, and particularly if you talk about issues of climate change, you cannot really lock climate outside a jurisdiction. It's something that really impacts the entire continent, particularly in Africa. We are talking about by 2050, around 30% of the GDP will be lost through climate change. And today morning, we just had different variations of all countries talking about the same thing. And that really gave us an opportunity to think about how then do we share our experiences. So we've worked with a number of countries, particularly on the innovation that we started in Kenya. We were looking at three big challenges in terms of the demand side, low quality, in terms of the customers not really understanding what they needed. At the same time, we're not giving them the right access. From the supply side, there was low quality supply of the products that companies are offering, but also from the regulatory side, a very restrictive environment that could not really enable a lot of change. So in Kenya, we came up with what we call the Bima Lab. There are two things, Bima Lab and Bima Box. Bima Lab was just, we were creating an ecosystem that will provide accessibility in terms of the coverage, the products that will be provided, at the same time just creating an environment that will enable those particular products to be created. And over time, with that, we did manage to get a lot of traction in Kenya. And we had to go and do it in Ghana. So we introduced Bima Lab in Ghana, and from the 22 insurtechs that we built up in Kenya, we went up in Ghana and built up 10 insurtechs to reintroduce that. And the funny thing is that the same problem that we are talking about in Kenya was the same thing, and I know Kofi maybe will kind of expound much on that, was the same challenge that also Ghana was experiencing. And we couldn't stop at that. We took the same idea to Nigeria, and currently we have over 43 insurtechs across the three countries, having already sold around 1 million policies for those people that had no insurance covers in the past. And that's kind of what we see, because if these challenges do affect another country, you'll basically get people migrating to your country, basically again straining the resources that are in that particular country. So if we can collaborate, and through the power of the interaction that we had, we are seeing a country like Nigeria, given that we had already introduced a regulatory sandbox in Kenya, Nigeria has already drafted a regulatory sandbox, and I know also in Ghana that's the thing that is also happening that particular end. So kind of a very impactful peer exchanges in terms of what has already worked in one particular country. And the key thing is that some of these ideas could be transferred to other countries because with the challenges that you are facing, you cannot lock doors out of collaboration. So we need to collaborate, we need to keep on learning, and we need to kind of share, because we are also thinking about maybe making VimaLab to be an African solution and maybe also go to other continents across the world. But we've seen a lot of results coming through. For instance, when we were in Nigeria, and this was a very good example, we were talking to a company that was just dealing with garbage collection in the street of Lagos. And one of the key things that this company said is that we want to make this as an insurance solution. And currently, you collect garbage, and that garbage becomes your premium. So ideally, in terms of the plastics that they are collecting, it's weight. So, and that company is called Sosocare. It was one of it won the African Innovation Awards in Africa this year. And that was part of the VimaLab solution that came out of Nigeria. Very interesting to see that now people can buy insurance through garbage collection in Nigeria. And that is something that now they are trying also to do in other countries such as Kenya, and I know maybe soon they might go into Ghana, because those poor people in the villages, they might not have money to pay, but they collect plastic and they sell that particular plastic. Now, on top of just making money, they're also getting covered in Nigeria for such solution, and that's some of the great examples that we've already seen in Nigeria. But interestingly also, in terms of just not only working with the regulators, we went ahead and worked with a number of insurance companies. So for instance, we did work with 12 insurance companies in Kenya to basically support that particular ecosystem. I think we had around 5 companies in Ghana and around 8 companies in Nigeria. So we are creating a very collaborative effect, that it's not only one side of the industry that is being impacted, but across the entire industry. The regulator, the insurance companies, we have also the donor companies, because another thing that we are having a big challenge in Africa is that we have so many donor organizations that are trying to do the same thing, but differently. So for instance, in Ghana, we worked with GIZ to really lead the Ghanaian process in terms of VimaLab. FSD Africa came in, and also now the regulator came in. In Nigeria, we are now working with IFC because they are tackling the same problem, and we are doing it in different ways. So another thing that we saw is that we need also to collaborate as institutions that are supporting these initiatives. So FSD Africa worked with GIZ in Ghana, FSD Africa worked with IFC and the regulator in Nigeria, and also in Kenya we worked with Prudential to really lead that particular process, Prudential Africa in Kenya. So many challenges tackled in different ways, but if we come together, we create a very powerful product that will change the continent and the world.
Wow. And to think that, the seeds of it, at least partially, could also be claimed by the lab process is absolutely amazing. Thank you for that. So I'll go to the second part of that peer exchange and get Kofi's perspective on, how that peer exchange brought about the changes that you were involved in as well. Not necessarily only with Kenya, but with the wider lab, other lab teams as well.
It's been exciting, because once you get into the lab, you get to know each other, and you can put faces to the names that you have. When you get an email from somebody that you know, your edge to respond is much better than getting an email from somebody you have never met. Okay, so once you know who sent this, there is a strong motivation to go ahead, and so there have been collaborations between Ghana and the Kenya team. The micro and small business clinic that I talked about, there was another member of the Kenyan team called Barbara, and she actually led a team to come down to Ghana to help us to do that clinic, and they designed the clinic, and they currency and the concept, and helped us to do that. And that was very easy to arrange because we knew who was on the other side. Once the email comes, phone calls go through, and that was really very easy to do. Apart from the lab, then there are other regulatory issues that we have had Elias to help us to work with. I only needed a phone call. I said, Elias will have a problem, and we are on. We find a solution. He's been to Ghana a couple of times to train my team, and so there have been a lot more collaborations than you can think about. Some of the issues outside what we dealt with within the lab.
No, thank you so much. And the game that you referred to was called Resilient Me, which was developed, again, origin story lies in the lab process, let's say, and it's one of the major tools that are used across African markets to educate people on inclusive insurance. Could Zain have a comment or question?
I'm absolutely fascinated by these, after lab partnerships that you guys have spoken about, and I'm curious to know, were you guys in the first one, the second one, or the third one, and which were more effective? Was it the face-to-face iLab scenario, the mixed or blended scenario, or which one? Which ones were you guys part of, and how did that affect the outcomes in terms of partnerships, collaboration, and as well as closeness with regard, with the teams involved? So that is my question.
Yeah, I can only give you the background in the sense that Lab 1 was totally in person, which had Albania, Kenya, Ghana, and Mongolia, of course. So that was in person. Even at the Lab 2, which had Argentina, India, Rwanda, and Morocco, which was totally virtual. So, totally different perspectives on that. And so that there, but, I'll let them speak in terms of how
this particular partnership was from the first lab, is that so? Yeah. The face-to-face one, where you actually then integrated, shared ideas, got close enough for you guys to then work after. Is that so?
But also on top of that, I think is the personalities. Yeah, because one of the key things that maybe we need to mention is that you must have the interest at heart to change the country. And what we realize with the interaction with Kofi and the rest of the members is that we had a common enemy that we needed to solve. And the push was, currently we have over 300 million people in Africa that have no coverage in a population of 1.5 billion. And if we don't really address that particular problem, then we'll get people trying to cross the Mediterranean. Every year around 20,000 African they try to cross to Europe. And out of that 20,000 people, over 2,000 people die in that Mediterranean every day. And the challenge is that we need to make sure Africa becomes a continent that people will have a hope of. And that can only happen by starting small, by creating small solutions that will give them hope that Africa is more resilient to make that particular change. So that was our idea. How then do we make the small changes? It started a very small way, because I remember when we had the team coming over to Nairobi, the Ghanaian team, and we had a number of interactions between us, and we agreed that let's make the change. And that is what we have been trying to do. And we are trying to carry many people along to make sure that in the next couple of years, no African will be trying to cross the Mediterranean to look for other options across the world.
Anthony.
Okay, I'm from Grenada, coming from the regulatory perspective. Lab 1 to L3, I think we are the smallest. So from your experience and your wealth of knowledge so far, someone did mention about the regulator probably was too far away and they have to put some blame on them. Let us keep in mind that the regulatory body has a mandate which is established by statute, a law. So you really cannot go outside of it except the law has changed. So from your experience, could you elaborate a little bit as to why you want to blame the regulator, or why the regulator seems to have been too far away, what they had to do? Just elaborate a little, because from my perspective, this will be a learning experience for me if we want to get back to consider. So if you could just elaborate a little bit more on that. Thank you.
Regulators operate by law, but most of the time they design the law. And insurance is a very technical area. And so to draft an insurance bill needs a lot of thought. And sometimes, even when you get to Parliament, you need to meet with the MPs and explain why you have the things that you have in the law. There are aspects, there are approaches to coming up with regulatory laws. And you could do it in such a way that it will become a straitjacket and you can't do anything outside of it. You could do it in a way that it become principle-based. So there's a principle, and once you follow the principle, you'll get it done. If you want to encourage a lot of innovation, you need to get your law to be principle-based. Okay, if you get your law to be rule-based, it will define all the entities that can operate on your market and what their roles should be. But you know, in the inclusive market, there are evolving players who come playing roles that are not traditional. Yeah. So if you have the straitjacket law, then you would become a very rigid regulator because your law will not allow you to permit any innovation on your market. So yes, you need to have a say, you need to see how these things, and then even when the law is passed, your approach to implementing it is also so important. So you see something, let's say your law doesn't say anything about it. Do you say no just because your law doesn't say anything about it, or you say, how can I accommodate this in such a way that it doesn't break the law, it doesn't infringe on the law? Okay, so that is another approach of, usually we sit in our office and we set rules on how the insurance business must be done, and we expect the insurance companies to comply with that. Okay? In a number of jurisdictions, even the consultation with the industry in designing the regulatory framework is very minimal. And so at the point of implementation, you will realize that there are a lot of changes. Of course, there's a mandate that you have, but that mandate is connected to the insurance companies, whatever it wants to achieve. And so it cannot run in contradiction to what they have. So they must speak to it, they must connect with what they have. So collaborating, the stakeholder approach, collaborating is very important. When we want to draft laws, when we want to design regulatory approaches and models, it is important that we consult with the industry and all the other stakeholders. Let's find ways that, yes, will help us to achieve our mandate, that ways that will not build walls for them and not kill innovation, and will help us to achieve what we want to achieve. If you haven't seen it before, you probably sit back and say, what can go wrong with this if we use it? And then once we identify what could go wrong with it, we say, what can we do to manage those risks if we go along with it? But if you just say no, then it means that nothing is going to change, because until you go back and change all the things, that cannot start. So, yeah, okay.
Sorry, I'm not a great regulator, but I play in the field. I like what Kofi said, but I think that the fundamental thing would be for you to get onto the field and see what happens there, because that has the potential of changing the way you are thinking in the office. And most of the time, that's what we do. We sit in office and think that we know what is out there, we understand what is out there, and therefore we have the solution to what is out there. And that's for me is what put us in that box or rigidity, But if you get out there and you see these things for yourself, then you begin to question yourself. You understand the situation and begin to question yourself and find solution, to how we can go about addressing this big monster that's out there. Having a lot more people in the safety net, for me, I think yeah, that's the way to go.
Just something else to add. There's what we call regulatory clarity, and that's where some of the regulators have gone wrong, whereby the industry would be, most of the time the regulators are feared because of, it's a fear of the unknown. They don't know what you have on your act, and until they do something that they didn't know is when you go. And most of the time the regulator is waiting for these guys to do the wrong thing so that they go and pick them up and kind of harass them, for a lack of a better word. I've been a regulator before, and there was a lot that we needed to change, ideally, to enable the regulator mindset in terms of providing clarity to the people that you want to guide with this, because regulations are just guiding principles, and in terms of really giving them an opportunity to really understand what is there, at times also interact with them the way you said, because things are changing, and most of the time you might be trying to control a risk that has already disappeared because of the things that how the world is moving. So what we try to do is kind of enabling that interaction, whereby the regulator provides clarity, but the industry also give them a mindset of what has already changed, so that you start planning ahead of time on what changes need to happen. But in the meantime, you need to have like something that will create that particular balance. So there is need to look at kind of balancing the prudential requirements that are there, but also really enabling market development and consciousness. And basically maintaining that particular balance is a deliberate effort that a regulator needs to undertake.
I like the word change.
Yeah.
Innovation might require change, because the regulator established by statute, you cannot operate with a box. Yep. When you step outside the box, someone outside tell you, what's the authority you have to get out of there?
It's a discussion.
So change the law.
We've seen this discussion happening quite a bit, and I'm very sure we can't resolve it right now or come to an agreement, but that's what the collaborative process is for, and we will have time, not only the rest of the day today, but also tomorrow and the day after, to carry on these conversations. And I know we are pushing past our time, we already did, and we always were afraid that 1 hour was not going to be enough, but we are about to go into lunch. But before we go, I have just one final question, and I'll take that to Monica from Kenya. It's like, after the lab has finished, how have either the interventions that you were working on, or like the qualitative takeaways that you've had from the lab, how that has progressed for you?
Thank you, Manoj. For us, I think when I was interacting with the Ghana team, we have a product called funeral expense or last expense. And I remember in Albania, when interacting with them, for them the uptake was very good. For us, the uptake has been it was on the lower side. And what made me realize is because of the different cultural practices, because we always used to refer to the Western countries that the uptake is so good. So that's why we should design it. But we realized that we also have a small way of social insurance in case of a funeral where we'd contribute. But with time, it was not enough. And the products we had designed were expensive. So for example, for a cover of about $1,000 USD, you are paying about $100 USD for about a family of 10, which was still on the higher side, and it was still locking out a number of people. Remember, one of the purposes of inclusive insurance is leave no one behind. So we as a company went back to the drawing board, and we decided to have a way of exposure. We are saying we're limiting our exposure such that we have realized in the family of 10, not everybody, we will not experience a claim, all 10 people in a year. So we're now limiting it to about 2 people in a family, right? So it also brought down the premiums to about, from about $100 to about $16. So we saw the uptick began, And I think as we speak, we already have 300 policies. And for us to ensure that this is not just sitting with Pioneer, it's more of industry. This is not a secret for us. It's something we've shared with other companies so that within their own pricing models, they can be able to come up with affordable solutions, because we're in the spirit of leaving no one behind. And we've seen, I think, about 4 other companies. Some have the first 4 debts, some have 3 debts, some have 5 debts. So it varies from company to company, but what we've seen is that there's been uptick, and we've also relaxed on the rules. You don't have to have so much in terms of paperwork. You just need to be a registered group and a bank account. How we'll pay you. Number 2, we've also reduced the population such that initially we were asking for about 30 people for each group. Now even a registered group with 10 principals, we'll kick it off. Yes.
All right. I know I'm standing between lunch and you. So quickly trying to, first of all, thank you all of you for your insights, sharing your stories. And I know we had planned for more, but we have the opportunity for the over the next 2 days to carry this discussion forward. So thank you very much for sharing your stories. And